The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Hirefastpodcast, a podcast aimed at educating you on hiring the right person for the right job and keeping them. Are you sick of spending precious time and energy hiring and training people just to have them turn around and quit? Then join Alan and his guests on Hire Fast as they teach you how to skillfully motivate and attract rock star talent. Now here is your host, Alan Daviduk.
Hello, my name is Alan Daviduk. You are listening to the Hire Fast podcast. Hire Fast is a component of the S.M.A.R.T system, and the S.M.A.R.T system is the fastest path to predictable and sustainable profit in your restaurant business. It's a true continuous improvement framework. There's nothing like it. It's a category of one that attracts and develops and retains better people, maintaining the staffing that you need to grow your business and live a better life. So who is this podcast for? This podcast is for restaurant owners, multi-unit managers, area managers, leadership people that are running restaurants and businesses, and the people that are struggling with attracting and developing better employees. They want to retain and protect their core employees, the long-term employees, the ones that are doing it for them every day. And they want to eliminate the poor performers. And I want to talk directly to the employers and the leadership people that feel like they do everything right and they still lose. It's like playing blackjack at the casino, right? You double down on 9, 10, and 11. You don't hit on 16, but somehow you still lose every single time. So last episode, I told you about my backstory and the pivot moments and the situations that made me seek change. The catalyst, that event that happened where I was so frustrated that I said, man, I'd rather let the customers make their own coffee and put the money in the register themselves than deal with the stuff that I'm dealing with these employees. And this initiated a journey for me to fix what I saw and the things that were broken and that I hated. So right now, these employees, and they're walking down the street and everybody's hiring. And this really puts us in a desperate situation. So 6 out of 10 restaurant owners are saying now that their number one problem is staffing, even though the restaurant industry is in a flux right now because it's death by 1,000 cuts. We have rising food costs and rising operational costs, and we have minimum wage costs that are going crazy that we can't control, right? Because we have the ceiling in our business of what we can afford to pay for labor, and the floor keeps creeping up, so the gap is getting smaller. And then we have costs like healthcare and different benefits and PTO. So now we have to add in that we have to pay people for times that they're not even in the restaurant, right? And then the higher employee turnover costs cost $4,000 to $8,000 to turn and replace an employee. And this is what I mean by death by 1,000 cuts. So I saw all this happening, and this is why I created the S.M.A.R.T system, right, to fix this. And S.M.A.R.T stands for Skillfully, Motivate, and Attract Rockstar Talent. And over the next several episodes, we're going to break these down, each one of them. But today, we're going to talk about the first step in the framework. We're going to talk about Skillfully. And Skillfully has 3 steps to it: goals, measures, and compensation. And then at the end, we're going to talk about a software tool that we put together called the Hirefast machine that automates this entire process for you. So today we're going to talk about just goals, just the number one component of Skillfully. So why is it important to set goals? Goals create this roadmap for success. Goals are the targets that you point to. So imagine like a sniper with a rifle, and he just zeroes in on the target and it's all he sees. And goals give you this starting point and a destination to reach. So imagine if you're like a boat and you're floating around in the ocean and you have no motor, you have no paddle, right? You just kind of float around. You go wherever the waves take you. Well, this is what's happening a lot when we don't have goals and targets. We see something shiny, we go that way. We see something shiny, we go that way. But imagine if you had a motor, right? And you could see land and you could just push the boat towards land, right? That's what goals do for us. And then when you write the goals down, now you can see where you're going and the changes that you need to make, and you can share these with your team so everybody's going the same direction. When I had no goals to hire employees, there were things that would happen to me like, people would dictate to me, what they wanted. They would control the whole process. They would demand time and money from me. And I remember this one time I got this phone call, and this happened many times, but this one particular time really triggered me. The person called me up and said, "Hey, Alan, before I waste my time and I come down and see you, how much are you going to pay me an hour, and how many hours a week are you going to give me?" And I said to myself, man, like, you're asking all the wrong questions. I don't know you. You don't know me. I don't know anything about your personality. You don't know anything about the job, right? Like, you're asking all the wrong questions. I don't want to play now, right? So you know what? Don't waste your time, right? Don't even bother coming down, because I can tell that we're not a good fit for each other. I can already see that this person is going to be a real pain in my butt, and they're never going to be happy, right? So people make us fit their needs, right? So the restaurant has needs and wants. I don't schedule people at 5 a.m. at the donut shop because I want to, right? I schedule them because there's customers in the restaurant. So someone that can, has to put their kid on the bus and can't come until 8:30, it's great, but it doesn't fit certain things that we need, right? And this is really where the struggle was, where I was always trying to fit square pegs into round holes. So a lot of companies, when they don't take the time to put plan and goals together, and they don't do what's necessary to create these systems and processes in the culture environment, and what happens is they become like that boat, right, that's just floating around. They become reactive, right? I just need employees. So they want to skip all the steps at the beginning. If the ladder has 10 steps, they want to start at step 4. And what ends up happening is they lower the standards, so they get this short-term need. I bring a couple of people in, right? But then they cause this long-term pain, and they don't even realize it. So without even realizing, they set this frame, and the employee controls the process now. So I call this the karmic cul-de-sac. So you're starting here, right, down at the bottom, and you hire a couple of people, and you're like, oh, this is great, right? Life is good. I got some hope. Now but you're not sure. You're like, they couldn't do a lot of the things I needed. I didn't like this. I didn't like what they said here. Their personality was off. And now, as you come up to the top, they start to perform, and then what happens, right? All the stuff that you felt over here starts to become true. They start not coming in. They start being late. They start aggravating customers, that maybe they steal, whatever it is, right? Now, then they quit, right? And now you come down to the bottom of the loop, and you're right back where you were in the shit show that you were in at the beginning. So now you just do it again, and you keep looping, and you keep looping. And this is the karmic cul-de-sac. And we don't even realize, because when we're in it, we don't see it, right? So where are you currently at today, right? What's working, what's not working? Where do you want to go in the future? And how do you get there? So if here's where you are and here's where you want to go, there's this gap in the middle, and that's how you get there. But we can't determine what the gap is if we don't really understand where we are and where we want to go. So I'll give you some examples when I was thinking about this, like, what are the things that just are irritating me, right? What are the things that aren't working? And you got to be crucially, brutally honest with yourself. I said that wrong. So you got to be brutally honest with yourself in this situation, because you're trying to fix your problem. So if you don't, really aren't, you're not really honest about where you are, it doesn't work, right? So I said things to myself like, well, I don't have enough staff, right? And I can't run the business the way I want to because I don't have that staff. Now, because I don't have that staff, there's domino effects of that. The stores aren't as clean and organized as I want. Managers are exhausted and stressed because they can't do the things that they need to do because they're constantly out front taking care of customers. Now we're delivering poor customer service, and guests are waiting too long, right? So the lines aren't moving. And because of this, sales are down. And I'm struggling every week to pay the bills. I don't have enough money in the bank, in the operating account. And now everything I do to fix it, I set some interviews up, and then the people don't show up for the interviews. And even when they get here now, I'm so exhausted and spent when I go into the interviews, and I have no process, I find myself talking too much, right? And trying to convince them and close them. And it's like every interview is different. It's like a snowflake, right? Every one of them is different. So where do I want to go, right? So I started saying, okay, well, I need a specific amount of people, right? If I take this one store, I need 6 new crew members, right? I want to be real specific about where I want to go, as specific as I can. So I need 6 new crew members. I need 1 assistant manager, and I want to get these people in 30 days, right? So these are just ideas. It may be different for you when you're going through this process yourself. And I got to get the stores cleaned up and more organized. So I'm going to set time 1 or 2 days a week. I specific one, so maybe Wednesday, right? Wednesday and Friday, whatever it is. And I'm going to put an extra person on to tackle these specific projects because I got to do something about it, right? And if I can get this assistant manager, now the managers will have help and they can work on the things that I need, right? The things that are steering the ship away from the iceberg: food cost, operational cost, marketing, the things that I need the help with to bring more customers in and increase the sales. Now, if I can get these 6 crew members that I need, now I can position people correctly and I can get the engine cranking and I can get my service times down, right? It's interesting, when you have a drive-through in your business, and people will, if they see a line at the drive-thru out into the street, they drive right by, right? But if they only see a couple of cars, they pull in. Right now, there's people that will pull into the line because they know that the line moves, which means they were in line yesterday and it moved, right? So this is the mechanics that have to happen, but you need the right staff to make the whole thing work. So if I can accomplish that, I can increase my sales by even 10%. Man, and if I keep everything else the same, that money will hit the bank and I'll be able to pay my bills, right? And now, if my ads, they're actually working and they're bringing people in and people are showing up for interviews. This is what I want, right? This is what the future looks like. And when I get those people in, I walk right into the interview and I have a real consistent process that only focuses on the needs of the company, the things that I need to write the schedule. So to put this into action, there's actually an acronym, ironically, that's called S.M.A.R.T, which I didn't create. It's called Specific, Measurable, Achievable, Relevant, and Timely. And what this process does is it takes your goals and it puts them in a box, right? And really tightens them up to give you a path to get to where you want to go. So specific, right? We were pretty specific when we said I wanted 6 employees and 1 assistant manager, right? That's what I'm after. But how do we measure that? So one of the things that I did to measure this is I used my schedule, right? Because my schedule was the tool that was a shit show. It just seemed like it was square peg round hole all the time. I had too many shifts. I would write it and it was awful. I had too many gaps and holes. So I'm going to use that as my measuring tool. When I bring these employees in and that schedule flows correctly and I can fill all my weekday shifts and my weekend shifts, I know I'm there. So that's my measuring mechanism. And to achieve this, I have to transform my recruiting to onboarding process, right? I have to spice up my job board ads to get people curious to come meet me and do an interview. And what's the relevance of this, right? By cleaning up my recruitment process and spicing up those ads, I'll have more candidates come in, which gives me the likelihood to get what I want, those 6 employees and that 1 assistant manager, right? And timely. You got to put a time and a date to it. I'm going to do this in 30 days or by February 2nd. And you got to set this goal. Otherwise, you're that boat floating around in the ocean and you just keep floating around and the goal just keeps getting pushed off. Next thing you know, it's November, right? So when I was, figuring this out, all of it, the biggest thing for me when I said that statement, right, that pivot statement was I wanted to stop lowering my standards, right? And I didn't 100% know what that meant, but it was so many things. And when I laid this out, what came out was the S.M.A.R.T system. That's what came out about 24 months later. But stop lowering my standards, that was what the cause of everything that was happening in my life. So there's one thing, though, that I want you to take away. If you learn nothing or you do nothing else of what we talked about today on this podcast, there's one piece that I want you to take away, and I want you to try to implement it in your business today, right? It's a spoke in a wheel, right? It's just one little component of 1,000 things we have to do, but this one you'll see some immediate impact from. So the person you want, they're working somewhere right now. The person you want isn't the person sitting at home collecting a government check. They're not the person that hasn't worked in 5 months and they just want to get back out in the workforce and try something, right? Now, if you get some of those people, it's nice, but the real person you work for is somewhere else. They're not super happy, and they need a reason to jump, right? So what do your current ads look like? These are the ads you put on the job boards like Indeed and all these other companies. There's hundreds of them, right? Do they say things like, my company's been in business for 45 years and the founder got on a boat from Italy when they were 5 years old? And if your ads look like this, ask yourself, does that compel me to do anything? Does that make me want to come work for you because your company's 45 years old? I'm sorry I'm the one to tell you this, but no one gives a shit, right? So what you need to do is you need to hit people at an emotional level. You need to make them curious. You need to draw them in. So I'm going to tell you about a client that I have. It's a different business in the restaurant industry, but man, we saw some major impact from just focusing on this one piece of their process. So they run a fire alarm and maintenance company. So their ads were typical, right? You would do a search for their ads, 85,000 things would get returned, and it was like trying to find a drop of water in the ocean, right? They blended. And that's bad news when you need help and you're trying to put these compelling ads out there. So I asked some questions to some of their techs and some of their people. What's some things that happen on the job site that you hate, that drive you nuts, right? So if I got some guy that's working somewhere else and he needs a reason to jump, we have to hit him. We have to find a way to break through, right, the veil and get through to him to say, man, I got to check these guys out, right? I love what they're talking about. So we created this story. It was a real short paragraph of a story that was at the beginning of the ad. And we said, okay, so you load up your van the night before to go do this job. And you drive an hour out to the job. And the job is in a brand new building and you're running wire or whatever on the 7th floor. So you unpack the van, you have to carry everything up 7 flights of stairs, and it takes you like an hour to get ready to start doing the job, right? You start doing the job and an inspector shows up. And the inspector says, where's your permit? And you say, well, I don't know. That wasn't up to me. I'm just a guy running the wire. He goes, well, if you don't show a permit, I got to shut you down. So you start frantically calling your foreman. Hey, I got an inspector here. There's no permit, right? And you're leaving messages and you're waiting. And he says, hey, I got to shut you down if you have no permit, right? Well, here at Company X, that'll never happen because we have people that their whole job is to make sure those permits are pulled, they're in place. We let the municipalities know you're coming and what time you're going to be there and exactly what you're doing. So that all goes away if you come work here, right? So just by doing that one little piece and spicing it up, boom, their response level started kicking up. Then we took another section that they were having some struggle, and they wanted helpers for the techs. So I asked the same questions, and we said, okay, so you're climbing on a ladder, you're at Home Depot, and you know how high the ceilings are at Home Depot, and you're carrying this wire up, and now you get up and you got to move ceiling tiles, and your arms are getting cut up, and you're getting your fingers all cut up from being in the ceiling, and but that won't happen here at Company X because we have tools that help get the wire up, and we have gloves and different things that we make sure that your safety is number one, right? Boom. All of a sudden, people are reading these ads saying, I got to check these guys out. Yeah, I'm sick of that. I'm sick of getting to the job site and driving an hour and then having to lose a half a day's pay because someone forgot to do something. Like, no way, it's not going to happen anymore. So take a look at your ads and incorporate this one. You don't have to change the whole thing. Just change the beginning of it, right? And then you can say, here's the normal boring stuff, and you can scroll down and read that stuff, right? But just change that piece at the beginning that pulls them in, that compels them, draws them in. So at the next episode, what we're going to cover is Section 2. Section 2 is called measures. Measures are how we measure all these goals, the progress of the goals that we set. And now that we've built these goals and we've converted them to the SMART goals, and we need to implement them, right? We need to set the timelines around them. We don't want these goals to end up right next to our New Year's resolutions that at week 3 of the year or we've already given up on. So we don't want that to happen here. We're trying to transform our business. So thanks so much for listening today, and remember that the leaders with the best employees win every time. If you haven't already, click below, click subscribe or follow so we can keep you up to date with Hire Fast. You can visit me at getsmartsystem.com. You can email me at alan@getsmartsystem.com, or you can call me at 1-888-3SMART5. Ciao for now. I'll see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.